Understanding the dynamics of financial decision-making is essential for personal growth and economic well-being. Many individuals find themselves adhering to familiar financial patterns because they perceive these patterns as safe and predictable. This perceived prudence often leads them to avoid risks, changes, and instability in favor of maintaining a steady but unchanging financial status. While this approach can provide a sense of security, it can also result in financial stagnation. This stagnation, masked as stability, prevents growth and adaptation in a constantly evolving economic environment. Financial stagnation differs from true financial security. True security involves establishing a stable foundation that supports sustainable growth, adaptation to changing circumstances, and the capacity to seize new opportunities. In contrast, stagnation is characterized by remaining in the same financial patterns without significant improvement or progression. Individuals experiencing stagnation may maintain steady employment and consistent income, but feel an underlying frustration due to lack of advancement or enhanced financial well-being. Recognizing the difference between these two states is critical for individuals seeking to improve their financial futures. The fear of losing what one already has often underpins the decision to maintain the status quo. This fear can trigger avoidance behaviors that limit financial exploration and experimentation. Such avoidance prevents individuals from engaging with potential risks that, while uncertain, could lead to increased financial stability or growth. Risk aversion can become a psychological barrier that restricts financial mobility and reinforces existing financial limitations. Identifying and addressing this fear is a necessary step in breaking free from stagnant financial cycles. Maintaining the same salary, debt levels, and financial habits over extended periods without progress can be detrimental. This pattern can inadvertently perpetuate a cycle wherein financial challenges remain unresolved and opportunities for improvement are missed. Over time, the consequences of inaction often outweigh the perceived dangers of change. This imbalance highlights the importance of deliberate and informed decision-making in financial matters. Implementing small, conscious steps toward altering financial behaviors can facilitate gradual transformation without triggering the impulsivity associated with rushed decisions. Such steps might include reassessing spending habits, exploring new income opportunities, or seeking financial education to increase confidence in managing risks. Incremental adjustments foster sustainable change by balancing the need for safety with the pursuit of growth. This discourse will explore methods to discern genuine financial security from comfort-based stagnation. It will examine psychological factors influencing risk tolerance and change resistance. Additionally, practical strategies for overcoming stagnation through mindful action and emotional awareness will be presented. The goal is to empower individuals to develop healthier financial mindsets that enable progress without compromising their sense of security. In conclusion, understanding the distinction between real safety and stagnation is crucial for long-term financial health. By examining the underlying fears and behaviors that drive financial decision-making, individuals can gain insight into their patterns and begin to adopt strategies that promote growth and fulfillment. This knowledge is foundational for building a balanced and resilient financial life capable of adapting to new challenges and opportunities. A critical aspect often overlooked when evaluating cautious behavior and managing personal finances is the psychological need for control and predictability. Individuals tend to gravitate toward routines and outcomes they can anticipate because unpredictability generates discomfort and anxiety. This preference for familiarity can diminish openness to exploring alternative pathways that might lead to improved economic situations. The root of this lies in the brain's aversion to uncertainty, which activates stress responses, creating a strong incentive to avoid unfamiliar financial moves, even when those moves hold potential benefits. Neurologically, this means the mind prioritizes immediate emotional comfort over possible long-term advantages, thus fostering inertia. Moreover, cognitive limitations influence an individual's tendency to remain within safe boundaries. Human cognition often simplifies complex scenarios into manageable chunks by using heuristics or mental shortcuts, which can inadvertently reinforce repetitive conduct. For example, when evaluating an opportunity, People might rely on previous experiences rather than assessing current data objectively. This leads to an entrenched perspective that the status quo, despite flaws or missed opportunities, is preferable to the perceived risks of change. Such cognitive shortcuts can reduce motivation to acquire new information or adapt approaches that contradict established beliefs, thereby sustaining a limited scope of activity. Another dimension contributing to persistent uniformity in economic circumstances involves societal and cultural conditioning. Social norms and values often emphasize prudence by equating fiscal stability with responsibility and success. This societal narrative can stigmatize risk-taking, especially in contexts where financial resources are scarce or safety nets are weak. The internalization of these norms may cause individuals to avoid ventures or innovations that could disrupt their perceived security, fearing judgment or failure. Consequently, adherence to traditionally accepted economic behaviors can override personal aspirations for advancement, limiting engagement with alternative strategies that could enhance economic positioning. In addition, emotional attachment to certain financial statuses or possessions can function as psychological anchors, influencing behavior beyond rational considerations. People may develop a strong identification with their current lifestyle or budgetary limits, viewing any alteration as threatening to their sense of self. This phenomenon, sometimes referred to as the endowment effect, leads to an overvaluation of what is already held compared to potential gains. Such emotional biases can create resistance to reallocating resources, investing in new ventures, or altering spending habits, thereby perpetuating a static condition that is mistakenly regarded as stable. Furthermore, behavioral inertia is often reinforced by feedback loops within personal finance. When individuals maintain consistent routines, they experience predictability in outcomes, albeit modest. This predictability is rewarding from a behavioral psychology standpoint, as the brain favors consistent, known results even if they are suboptimal. The discomfort or uncertainty associated with deviation from such routines may trigger psychological stress or regret anticipation, discouraging experimentation. This cycle can perpetuate a pattern whereby incremental improvements are sacrificed for the comfort of familiar outcomes, thus maintaining a plateau with little progression. Additionally, the temporal orientation of individuals plays a significant role in maintaining steady, yet unchanging financial states. Those who focus primarily on short-term stability often prioritize immediate comfort over long-term aspirations, which require tolerating temporary uncertainty. This temporal focus can result in underinvestment in skills development, savings growth, or asset diversification, all of which necessitate a future-oriented mindset. Without a vision extending beyond the present, resources and efforts align with sustaining current conditions instead of facilitating transformations that might entail temporary setbacks but yield longer-term rewards. It is also important to recognize the impact of external environmental factors on maintaining existing monetary behaviors. Economic volatility, job market instability, and unpredictable policy changes may legitimize caution and discourage exploratory strategies. These real-world conditions create a backdrop where conservative approaches are adaptive responses to perceived threats rather than simply personal reluctance to change. Hence, caution is sometimes a rational strategy reflecting external realities, complicating the process of identifying when comfort inhibits necessary progress. Distinguishing between adaptive caution and excessive passivity requires a nuanced assessment of one's circumstances relative to broader economic contexts. Finally, the role of self-efficacy, the belief in one's capacity to execute actions required to manage and improve personal wealth decisively influences engagement with new financial challenges. Low self-confidence can arise from prior setbacks or insufficient financial literacy, creating barriers to initiating change. Without confidence in one's abilities, individuals may default to familiar but stagnant approaches, fearing the inability to successfully navigate alternative paths. Building competence through education, mentorship, or incremental experiences can enhance self-efficacy, providing the psychological foundation necessary to embrace transformation deliberately and sustainably. Examining the cognitive frameworks individuals use to navigate monetary situations reveals how deeply ingrained mental habits can inhibit progress. Mental models, which serve as internal representations of how the financial world operates, often limit the scope of possibilities considered. When these schemas are rigid, they constrain one's ability to envision alternatives or innovate pathways toward improved economic well-being. For instance, a person may operate under the assumption that investing entails uncontrollable risk. This belief can prevent exploration of diverse asset classes or strategies that match different comfort thresholds. Expanding mental frameworks through education and exposure allows for an expanded awareness of viable options, encouraging adaptive responses to shifting circumstances. Furthermore, psychological phenomena such as loss aversion have significant impacts on behaviors related to resource management. This bias causes individuals to place disproportionately greater weight on potential losses compared to equivalent gains, often resulting in paralysis or overly conservative approaches. Neuroeconomic studies illustrate that the emotional weight of losing an amount of money surpasses the pleasure derived from gaining that same sum. This imbalance erodes motivation to attempt changes that could enhance economic standing, even when the statistical likelihood of positive results is favorable. Recognizing and mitigating loss aversion through cognitive reframing is essential to encourage calculated engagement with opportunities. In addition to individualized cognitive barriers, systemic factors influence the persistence of existing monetary patterns. Institutional frameworks, such as limited access to credit or financial products tailored to specific demographic groups, can enforce rigid behaviors by restricting available alternatives. For example, individuals operating within underbanked environments may lack access to diversified saving instruments or affordable capital, leading to repetitive, constrained monetary activities that secure short-term needs but offer minimal advancement potential. Policy interventions aimed at increasing inclusivity and broadening product availability address these structural limitations, empowering individuals to make informed choices aligned with personal aspirations. Another pivotal aspect relates to emotional regulation competencies that underpin how individuals respond to monetary uncertainty. Those with well-developed emotional regulation skills are better equipped to tolerate volatility and ambiguity inherent in economic ventures. They can dissociate transient emotional turmoil from objective appraisal, enabling more deliberate appraisal of opportunities. Conversely, deficits in emotional regulation can heighten reactive tendencies, driving avoidance of situations perceived as threatening even when actual risk levels are manageable. Emotional intelligence training, including mindfulness and stress management techniques, fosters resilience that supports sustainable adaptation to fluctuating environments. Behavioral economics also highlights the impact of temporal discounting on monetary conduct. This concept refers to the tendency to undervalue benefits or outcomes that occur in the future compared to immediate rewards. As a result, individuals might prioritize preserving current financial stability rather than engaging in activities that require upfront investments with deferred returns. The inclination to prefer immediate gratification impairs initiatives aimed at enhancing economic conditions, especially when rewards necessitate patience and consistent effort. Interventions to realign preferences with extended reward horizons can include goal setting, visualization of future scenarios, or structured incentive mechanisms. Moreover, social comparison processes significantly shape monetary behaviors by providing reference points against which individuals evaluate their own circumstances. Continuous exposure to peers who exemplify specific economic achievements or consumption patterns can generate feelings of inadequacy or complacency, depending on one's position relative to those standards. This dynamic influences both the willingness to pursue advanced economic strategies and satisfaction with current arrangements. Cultivating awareness of these psychological influences enables more autonomous evaluation aligned with individualized objectives, rather than externally imposed benchmarks. The role of narrative framing in shaping monetary expectations and actions deserves attention. The stories individuals tell themselves about financial identity and capability often derive from cultural influences, familial teachings, or prior experiences. If these narratives emphasize scarcity, limitation, or helplessness, they form cognitive barriers that dampen motivation. Conversely, reframing personal monetary stories in terms of possibility, agency, and adaptability can transform attitudes and behavior patterns. Techniques such as cognitive restructuring or guided reflection support the development of empowering self-conceptions. Lastly, technological advancements offer tools that can disrupt entrenched monetary routines by facilitating new methods of resource management. Digital platforms for budgeting, investing, and financial education provide accessible avenues for experimentation and learning. Automated systems supporting gradual portfolio adjustments or savings can reduce the psychological burden and promote incremental progress. However, successful integration of technology requires overcoming initial resistance and building competencies to harness these resources effectively. Tailored user education and ongoing support are crucial to maximizing benefits from technological innovations that enable movement beyond static financial situations. A comprehensive examination of financial inertia requires attention to how habitual patterns form through reinforcement over time. Repetitive behaviors in monetary management create neural pathways that solidify routine responses, often without conscious evaluation. This automaticity makes altering established financial conduct challenging, as embedded habits guide choices with minimal cognitive load. Neuroscientific research demonstrates that habits are supported by basal ganglia activity, which governs procedural memory and repetitive actions. Transitioning away from ingrained routines necessitates deliberate interruption and restructuring of these pathways, often through sustained practice and conscious repetition of alternative behaviors. Additionally, the role of self-imposed mental constraints merits exploration. Individuals may create internal limits or boundaries based on perceived capabilities or acceptable risk thresholds. Such self-limiting beliefs can restrict exploration of financial opportunities that lie just beyond these borders. These boundaries often stem from extrapolations of past experiences, generalizing limitations without accounting for variable contexts or evolving abilities. Assessment tools, such as reflective exercises or cognitive assessments, can assist individuals in identifying and expanding these perceived constraints, enabling broader consideration of possibilities previously dismissed. Another dimension involves the influence of biases related to control and attribution in financial contexts. For instance, an external locus of control, believing outcomes depend on factors outside oneself, can diminish motivation to alter financial behaviors, fostering passivity. Conversely, an inflated sense of control might lead to overconfidence and resistance to adjusting methods even when indicators suggest stagnation. Achieving calibrated confidence through feedback mechanisms and objective performance review supports adaptive financial conduct and minimizes maladaptive persistence in unproductive patterns. The intricacies of motivation also play a critical role in determining whether individuals maintain financial stasis or pursue change. Motivation comprises multiple components, including intrinsic drives like personal values and extrinsic incentives such as rewards or social recognition. Misalignment between motivation sources and financial objectives can result in apathy or avoidance. Identifying congruence between motivational factors and desired economic outcomes enhances clarity and directs effort effectively. For example, incorporating meaningful values into financial planning connects actions with deeper purpose, fostering sustained commitment to evolving monetary practices. Furthermore, intertemporal choices significantly impact economic behavior directions. The tendency to prefer immediate reward fulfillment over future gains is rooted in how individuals discount the value of delayed benefits. Various methods, including commitment devices or structured incentive plans, can moderate this preference, encouraging more balanced assessments of trade-offs. Psychological experiments illustrate that framing outcomes in terms of losses or gains alters discounting, suggesting that reframing financial prospects can influence planning horizons and resource allocation. External environmental determinants also shape financial pathways beyond personal cognition. Factors like access to education, community support systems, and economic infrastructure affect available options and inform feasible decisions. Areas with robust financial literacy initiatives, mentorship opportunities, and supportive policies foster adaptability and expansion of financial behaviors. Recognizing the role of social determinants highlights the importance of addressing systemic barriers while individual improvement efforts are underway. In addition, varying attitudes toward uncertainty influence willingness to adjust finances. A propensity for ambiguity aversion leads some individuals to deny or downplay uncertain scenarios, maintaining existing practices to maintain comfort. Conversely, those with a higher tolerance for unpredictability are more likely to experiment with diverse financial instruments or ventures. Psychological profiling and counseling can assist in calibrating attitudes toward ambiguity, empowering balanced responses that embrace potential benefits alongside manageable risks. Moreover, cognitive load and mental fatigue may compromise the ability to initiate change in complex financial environments. Managing multiple responsibilities and processing vast amounts of information can overwhelm executive functioning, resulting in decision avoidance or defaulting to familiar choices. Simplification techniques, such as prioritization frameworks or decision aids, reduce cognitive burdens and facilitate proactive adjustments. Structured approaches to financial planning also mitigate overwhelm, aiding clarity and confidence during transitions away from static practices. Finally, the presence and quality of social relationships exert considerable influence on financial trajectories. Interpersonal dynamics provide feedback, encouragement, and accountability, shaping attitudes toward monetary progression. Positive reinforcement from trusted networks cultivates openness to new approaches, while negative experiences or isolation can deepen resistance. Group workshops, peer mentoring, and financial coaching introduce supportive environments conducive to experimenting with and adopting alternative financial models. Incorporating social capital into personal economic development strengthens resilience and broadens horizons. Systematic examination of decision-making processes reveals that individuals often rely heavily on mental shortcuts known as heuristics, which simplify complex choices but can inadvertently restrict adaptability. For instance, the availability heuristic leads people to overweigh information that is most readily recalled, potentially causing misjudgments about economic scenarios. When individuals predominantly base actions on recent experiences or widely publicized events, they may develop skewed risk assessments, favoring what seems common or familiar instead of objectively evaluating new options. This cognitive filtering mechanism contributes to persistent routines that limit exploration of novel strategies. Moreover, regulatory focus theory offers insight into motivational orientations that influence economic initiatives. People with a prevention focus prioritize safety and stability, striving to avoid losses and undesirable outcomes. Conversely, those with a promotion focus emphasize achievement and advancement, seeking gains and opportunities. Individuals with a dominant prevention orientation may become anchored in established conditions, perceiving change as a threat rather than a chance for improvement. Understanding personal motivational dispositions enables targeted self-management techniques designed to balance cautious tendencies with progressive actions. In addition, effective forecasting biases affect expectations and subsequent conduct. Predictions about future emotional reactions frequently skew toward overestimating negative feelings associated with potential setbacks. This tendency to anticipate excessive distress discourages proactive efforts toward improvement and maintains reliance on existing conditions. Empirical studies demonstrate that people often recover more rapidly from adverse events than anticipated, suggesting that decision paralysis based on emotional forecasts can be mitigated by increasing awareness and recalibrating expectations. Neuroscientific research also elucidates the differential activation of brain regions during evaluative processes related to uncertainty and risk. The interplay between the prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions such as planning and impulse control, and the amygdala, linked to emotion processing, determines response tendencies. Overactivation of threat-responsive circuits may result in withdrawal from opportunities perceived as risky, reinforcing immobility in economic choices. Interventions such as cognitive behavioral approaches aim to modulate these neural responses, fostering more balanced assessments and adaptive behavior. Furthermore, the examination of temporal self-continuity sheds light on how individuals relate their current self to future versions. A diminished sense of connectedness to one's future self undermines motivation to invest in long-term goals, promoting a preference for immediate gratification or maintenance of present circumstances. Techniques that enhance this continuity, like guided visualization exercises or written reflections about future scenarios, have been shown to increase willingness to engage in behaviors that yield delayed benefits. Economic sociology contributes an understanding of how social networks and institutional affiliations influence patterns of resource allocation and risk engagement. Trust embedded within communal relationships facilitates access to knowledge, support, and opportunities that might remain unavailable in isolation. Conversely, networks with low social capital can constrain exposure to advantageous alternatives, perpetuating conservative approaches rooted in circumscribed environments. Strengthening social ties and participation in collaborative groups can stimulate openness to experimentation and progressive change. In the domain of behavioral change, the trans-theoretical model identifies stages individuals undergo when modifying habits, from pre-contemplation to maintenance. Recognition of one's current stage allows for tailored strategies that match readiness to act. For example, those in the contemplation stage benefit from gathering information and weighing pros and cons, whereas those in preparation actively plan incremental steps. Misalignment between intervention efforts and stage can lead to resistance or relapse, underscoring the importance of self-assessment in facilitating purposeful transformation. Additionally, the influence of identity-related factors shapes the adoption of economic roles and practices. Individuals integrate conventional narratives about personal values, social expectations, and roles into their self-concept, which in turn drives behavior. Deep-seated identification with being a cautious provider or cautious spender can limit the acceptance of risk-taking or investment behaviors. Revising these identity constructs through reflection and dialogue promotes flexibility and adaptive capacity. From a practical perspective, habit formation research emphasizes the creation of environmental cues that support desired actions while reducing friction points. Structuring surroundings, workflows, and routines to make beneficial choices easier increases the probability of sustained adherence. For instance, automating bill payments or organizing budgets using digital tools reframes complex processes into manageable tasks, lowering barriers to implementation. Such structural modifications play a crucial part in overcoming stagnation embedded in existing financial patterns. Lastly, cognitive reframing techniques derived from psychotherapy empower individuals to reinterpret challenges and motives in ways that foster growth-oriented perspectives. By consciously altering the narrative around risk and uncertainty, individuals develop healthier associations that reduce anxiety and open avenues for experimentation. Adopting flexible thinking enables evaluation of setbacks as learning experiences, diminishing fear-based avoidance, and enhancing resilience within evolving economic contexts. Exploring additional dimensions central to breaking habitual economic patterns reveals the significance of time perception and psychological flexibility. Research indicates that individuals who perceive time as a finite resource, exhibiting a future expansive outlook, tend to allocate resources more intentionally, prioritizing activities that yield progressive benefits. This temporal perspective encourages behaviors aimed at enhancing economic standing through measured adjustments. Conversely, those with a constricted view of future possibilities often emphasize maintenance over growth, contributing to stasis. Enhancing awareness of one's temporal orientation through reflective exercises can promote a mindset poised for incremental advancement. Moving forward, the concept of cognitive dissonance plays a notable role in sustaining monetary routines. When individuals encounter information or feedback that conflicts with their established beliefs about personal capabilities or financial environments, they might experience psychological discomfort. To alleviate this tension, they may unconsciously reject or minimize contradictory evidence, thereby reinforcing existing behaviors. Awareness of this dissonance effect is crucial in cultivating openness to new perspectives and adaptive practices. Approaches that gently guide individuals through cognitive reappraisal can facilitate acceptance and integration of actionable insights, supporting transformation efforts. Furthermore, the role of executive functions, specifically working memory and inhibitory control, merits attention. Effective adaptation in economic contexts requires managing multiple pieces of information, delaying immediate gratification, and overriding ingrained responses. These cognitive capacities differ among individuals and can become taxed under stress or fatigue, reducing flexibility. Targeted cognitive training and stress reduction interventions have demonstrated effectiveness in enhancing executive function, which in turn supports greater responsiveness to changing contexts and willingness to adopt novel methods of resource management. An additional consideration involves the influence of implicit attitudes on economic behaviors. These subconscious evaluations, formed through accumulated experiences and societal messaging, shape reactions and preferences outside of conscious awareness. Individuals harboring implicit skepticism toward change may resist initiatives that threaten current comfort zones, even when consciously recognizing potential benefits. Identifying and uncovering these underlying biases through introspective tools or professional guidance can reduce their inhibitory effects, allowing for more deliberate and informed choices aligned with evolving goals. In the realm of behavioral motivation, the implementation intention technique has gained traction as a practical tool to bridge intention and action, particularly useful in overcoming inertia. This method entails specifying exact conditions and responses in advance, such as if situation X arises, then I will engage in behavior Y. Formulating precise plans reduces ambiguity, making it easier to initiate shifts in routines and habits. Empirical evidence supports such structured planning to increase adherence to change efforts, enhancing the likelihood of sustained progression beyond comfort zones. Moreover, the process of mental contrasting serves as a cognitive strategy facilitating advancement. This involves juxtaposing the desired future state against current obstacles, fostering realistic assessment and energizing problem solving. Rather than ignoring challenges, mental contrasting enhances commitment by clarifying necessary steps and potential barriers. Utilization of this technique can help individuals balance optimism with pragmatism, cultivating resilience needed to move away from static financial positions and toward meaningful growth. Stress management strategies also contribute substantially to creating an environment conducive to change. Chronic stress is known to impair judgment and reduce cognitive flexibility, factors that can entrench existing patterns due to heightened avoidance and rigid thinking. Incorporating practices such as mindfulness, breathing exercises, or physical activity improves emotional regulation and cognitive clarity. This physiological and psychological resilience supports openness to novel approaches and reduces the tendency to cling to familiar yet limiting behaviors. Considering the socialization aspects, role modeling within communities plays a pivotal part in shaping economic mindsets. Exposure to individuals exhibiting adaptive and progressive monetary conduct provides behavioral templates and establishes social norms that validate risk-taking and experimentation. Such modeling encourages emulation by demonstrating achievable outcomes and offering practical insights. Facilitating peer learning groups or mentorship programs can harness this mechanism effectively, accelerating the internalization of growth-oriented habits. Finally, the integration of metacognitive strategies enhances self-awareness around habitual tendencies. Metacognition involves monitoring one's own cognitive processes, including recognizing when automatic responses dominate and evaluating the efficacy of current approaches. Developing this higher-order thinking skill allows individuals to intervene consciously, opting for reflective consideration instead of reactive repetition. Structured self-monitoring tools and journaling facilitate this process, increasing the capacity to modify entrenched behaviors and embrace sustainable progression. An essential aspect to consider in overcoming prolonged financial inertia involves understanding the impact of behavioral economics principles related to commitment and habit formation. Commitment devices serve as mechanisms to link intentions with concrete actions, reducing the likelihood of reverting to prior patterns. For example, arranging automatic transfers into savings accounts or investment plans can create structured routines that bypass the need for frequent conscious choices. These predetermined commitments lessen the psychological friction associated with initiating change and help solidify new habits over time. In addition, examining the influence of sunk cost bias reveals how past investments in money, time, or effort may discourage individuals from altering their current fiscal trajectories. When individuals perceive that deviating from a familiar path would render previous sacrifices futile, they may irrationally persist to maintain continuity, even if alternative approaches offer improved outcomes. Recognizing this cognitive distortion allows for the reassessment of ongoing behaviors in light of prospective benefits rather than sunk resources, facilitating more adaptive adjustments. Environmental design also plays an impactful part in shaping spending and saving activities. Modifications in immediate surroundings can reinforce new behaviors by reducing exposure to triggers associated with previous ineffective habits. For instance, minimizing access to credit cards or unsubscribing from promotional materials can help curb impulsive expenditures. Moreover, organizing bills and accounts to simplify management encourages proactive engagement and diminishes procrastination. These physical and digital alterations work synergistically to create supportive contexts conducive to change. The intersection of psychological stress with physiological health further contributes to economic stasis. Chronic stress has been linked not only to cognitive impairment, but also to diminished physical well-being, which may constrain energy and motivation for proactive financial adjustments. Incorporating wellness practices, such as adequate rest, nutrition, and exercise, can improve overall functioning and indirectly foster greater capacity to confront and implement changes in monetary behavior. Furthermore, the application of motivational interviewing techniques has proven effective in eliciting intrinsic commitment to change. This client-centered approach utilizes reflective listening and open-ended questioning to explore ambivalence about altering entrenched patterns. Through collaborative dialogue, individuals are encouraged to articulate personal values and discrepancies between current behaviors and desired goals, enhancing internal motivation. Such methods support autonomy and empowerment, reducing resistance to transformation. Another critical factor involves the differentiation between risk tolerance and risk perception. While tolerance refers to the actual capacity to manage potential loss or uncertainty, perception encompasses subjective interpretations which may not align with objective assessments. Individuals often overestimate threats due to heuristics influenced by effective responses or anecdotal information. Enhancing accuracy in evaluating risks fosters more balanced approaches, enabling informed progression that considers possible consequences without exaggerated apprehension. Social identity theory offers additional insight into behavioral persistence. People derive self-definition from group memberships and social categories, which influence attitudes and behaviors consistent with accepted norms. When economic behaviors are integral to an individual's social identity, deviating from established practices may provoke discomfort or fear of social exclusion. Facilitating environments where adaptive behaviors are normalized within peer circles helps mitigate this barrier by aligning change with group values and acceptance. The exploration of neuroplasticity underscores the brain's capacity to rewire in response to new experiences and learning, which is fundamental in disrupting long-standing patterns. Engaging consistently in novel approaches to managing resources fosters neural adaptations that replace automatic responses with deliberate choices. This biological foundation reinforces the efficacy of persistent, intentional practice in achieving behavioral transformation. Moreover, framing goals with specificity and clarity enhances focus and facilitates progress tracking. Vague aspirations lack the structure necessary to guide concrete action steps and monitor success. Employing measurable criteria, deadlines, and benchmarks provides direction and motivation, transforming abstract intentions into achievable targets. This method supports accountability and encourages sustained engagement, critical for moving beyond plateaued states. Lastly, the impact of technological tools extends beyond basic automation by offering educational resources, simulation capabilities, and personalized feedback. Interactive platforms enable users to explore various scenarios, evaluate alternatives realistically, and adjust plans responsively. These functionalities empower individuals to gain confidence and competence, reducing apprehension about experimenting with new approaches and supporting gradual advancement toward desired outcomes. To deepen understanding of financial stagnation masked as prudence, it is important to examine the influence of goal-setting frameworks and their impact on motivation and behavior change. Goal-setting theory emphasizes that the specificity and difficulty of goals significantly influence performance outcomes. Ambiguous or overly broad objectives lack the precision needed to prompt actionable steps, which contributes to ongoing inertia. Setting clear, measurable financial goals, such as increasing savings by a fixed percentage within a defined time frame, introduces structure, promoting purposeful effort and progress tracking. Additionally, goals aligned with personal values often enhance commitment by generating internal drive that sustains movement toward change. Another dimension entails the interplay between financial literacy and decision-making competence. Financial literacy encompasses the understanding of budgeting, credit usage, investment principles, and risk assessment. Deficiencies in these areas can discourage experimentation with alternative strategies, as individuals feel ill-equipped to navigate complexities confidently. Educational interventions focusing on critical financial concepts empower individuals to analyze options judiciously, weighing costs and returns with greater clarity. Access to tailored learning resources increases autonomy, enhancing capacity to disrupt stagnant patterns through informed choices. Moreover, habit discontinuity theory offers insights into how environmental transitions can create openings for behavioral change. When individuals undergo significant life changes, such as relocation or job transition, existing financial routines become destabilized, reducing psychological resistance to new approaches. This effect emerges because habitual cues linked to former settings diminish, facilitating the adoption of innovative practices. Capitalizing on these disruptive moments by intentionally introducing beneficial financial habits can serve as effective catalysts for growth, shifting trajectories away from immobilization. Furthermore, an examination of temporal discounting mechanisms reveals how individuals prioritize immediate outcomes at the expense of future gains. This cognitive bias leads to undervaluing benefits available later, resulting in deferred investments or savings. Techniques such as episodic future thinking, which involves vividly imagining desired future scenarios, have been demonstrated to reduce discounting tendencies. This process enhances valuation of long-term rewards, motivating behaviors aligned with sustainable financial progress rather than short-term preservation of status quo. Social influence dynamics also contribute to persistence in familiar financial behaviors. Normative pressures arising from family, social circles, or cultural contexts shape preferences and choices. Individuals may conform to collective standards that promote caution, perceiving deviation as social risk. Understanding these social determinants clarifies why financial innovation is sometimes resisted despite potential gains. Interventions that foster communities endorsing flexibility and experimentation can counteract restrictive social norms, nurturing environments supportive of deliberate economic advancement. In addition, the concept of psychological capital, encompassing hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism, affects financial behavior adaptability. Individuals with high psychological capital tend to appraise challenges as manageable and setbacks as temporary, encouraging proactive modifications to monetary strategies. Developing these positive psychological resources through coaching or self-development practices leads to enhanced coping strategies and openness to calculated adjustments. This internal resource pool promotes dynamic engagement rather than passive maintenance of existing conditions. Cognitive load considerations further illuminate barriers to initiating change. Complex financial decisions demand significant mental effort, sometimes exceeding available cognitive capacity when combined with concurrent life stressors. This overload can result in decision paralysis, deferring or avoiding alterations to financial routines. Simplification methods, such as breaking tasks into incremental steps, utilizing decision aids, or prioritizing key actions, reduce cognitive demands. Such approaches facilitate manageable progress and minimize overwhelm, aiding transitions out of stagnation. Additionally, regulatory fit theory provides perspective on how the manner in which goals and strategies are pursued affects motivation. When individuals engage in behaviors congruent with their motivational orientation, whether focusing on prevention or promotion, they experience heightened engagement and persistence. Tailoring financial change initiatives to align with personal motivational states increases the likelihood of sustained efforts, reducing friction that arises when approaches conflict with inherent tendencies. Finally, incorporating reflective practices enhances metacognitive awareness essential for transforming financial habits. Regular self-assessment through journaling or structured questioning fosters recognition of automatic behaviors and triggers reinforcing unchanged patterns. This conscious observation permits deliberate choice-making and strategy adjustment. Encouraging periodic reflection cultivates an adaptive mindset capable of evolving financial behaviors in response to shifting internal goals and external conditions, thus countering comfortable yet limiting steadiness. The intricate relationship between emotional patterns and practical financial management reveals that sustainable progress originates from integrating internal clarity with actionable steps. An underlying tension exists between the comfort of predictability and the necessity of growth, creating a dynamic where the familiar provides reassurance while simultaneously imposing constraints. True transformation emerges by recognizing this duality and cultivating a mindset capable of balancing stability with openness to change. Such a stance is neither impulsive nor immobilized, but purposefully calibrated to engage opportunities without sacrificing groundedness. Examining cognitive and emotional factors together highlights how introspective awareness strengthens resilience amidst uncertainty. Understanding subconscious drivers offers insight into resistance mechanisms that inhibit advancement, yet this awareness must be complemented by strategies fostering adaptability. Mental flexibility becomes essential to reinterpret challenges as stimuli for development rather than threats to security. This cognitive agility underpins the capacity to navigate complex economic landscapes while maintaining a centered, confident orientation toward evolving goals. The interplay between deeply rooted beliefs and external circumstances further emphasizes the importance of contextual sensitivity. Economic environments are not monolithic. They vary according to sociocultural, institutional, and personal dimensions, each shaping the perceived range of viable options. Awareness of these contextual variables encourages nuanced evaluation and tailored approaches rather than one-size-fits-all prescriptions. Consequently, adaptability entails both internal psychological shifts and informed responsiveness to situational realities, creating a synergistic process that fosters meaningful change. Recognizing how habitual responses become encoded neurologically underscores the need for intentional disruption and consistent practice. Habitual patterns offer efficiency, but do not inherently prioritize growth. To cultivate new pathways, deliberate effort must replace automaticity, supported by incremental adaptations that build competence and confidence over time. This approach respects the cognitive load involved in change, reducing overwhelm and sustaining momentum through manageable steps rather than abrupt overhaul. Moreover, motivational frameworks contribute to sustaining engagement by linking deeper values to tangible objectives. Purpose-driven motivations strengthen perseverance amid ambiguity and setbacks. Encouraging reflective practices that clarify these connections helps anchor actions to meaningful aims, transcending transient discomforts inherent to transformation. This alignment fosters intrinsic commitment, which proves more robust than compliance driven by external pressure or fleeting inspiration. Structural adjustments in environments also impact progress by shaping accessibility and reducing barriers. Modifying physical or digital surroundings influences behavior by simplifying desired choices and minimizing triggers for regression into prior modes. These environmental facilitators function as scaffolds, reinforcing emerging practices until they gain stability. Integrating such supports with psychological work enhances efficacy, illustrating the interconnectedness of mindset and context in sustaining forward movement. Differentiating emotional responses from objective appraisal sharpens discernment critical for effective shifts. Emotional reactions often color perceptions of potential risks and rewards, sometimes exaggerating dangers or downplaying benefits. Developing skills to observe and regulate emotional states supports clearer evaluation, enabling decisions grounded in balanced judgment. Such regulation promotes resilience, reducing the likelihood of retreat into passivity or rash actions prompted by heightened affect. Finally, social dimensions play a subtle yet profound role in shaping trajectories. Interpersonal dynamics provide feedback loops that can validate or challenge current patterns. Constructive social networks foster experimentation and normalize growth-oriented behaviors, while isolated or critical environments tend to reinforce caution and stagnation. Cultivating supportive connections that embody encouragement and shared aspirations amplifies change efforts, illustrating how communal factors integrate with individual psychology to influence outcomes. These converging considerations collectively inform a framework for progressing beyond the tension of secure stagnation toward a dynamic equilibrium where safety coexists with expansion. Progress requires harmonizing internal awareness, motivated engagement, contextual insight, and supportive external conditions. This synthesis prepares the foundation from which deliberate, measured steps can emerge, enabling genuine evolution in personal resource management and overall financial well-being. Navigating the tension between assuredness and progress requires a shift in perspective that transcends conventional notions of safety as mere preservation. True security in economic matters is not static but dynamic, predicated on a foundation that simultaneously offers protection and nurtures growth. This dynamic security emerges from an integrative process where conscious awareness, intentional action, and adaptive resilience coalesce. A mindset rooted in flexibility and informed confidence enables thoughtful engagement with uncertainty, transforming potential vulnerabilities into opportunities for measured advancement. The core challenge lies in recognizing that comfort zones labeled as safe can function as barriers to development. Stability that does not evolve inherently contains latent restrictions, constraining potential and fostering complacency. Over time, this inertia exacts a toll by limiting the capacity to capitalize on favorable changes and diminishing readiness to respond to external shifts. Embracing growth necessitates a willingness to question ingrained assumptions and habitual patterns. Such inquiry fosters a deeper understanding of internal needs and external constraints, organizing insights into purposeful strategies that balance caution with ambition. Effective adaptation also depends on cultivating a refined relationship between emotion and cognition. Emotional responses serve vital roles in guiding choices, but require calibration to prevent inadvertent avoidance or excessive risk aversion. Developing skillful self-regulation enhances clarity, allowing for assessments that integrate feelings without capitulating to them. This equilibrium supports calibrated risks and thoughtful experimentation, creating space for incremental yet meaningful progress that respects personal boundaries without succumbing to paralysis. Environmental and social contexts act as critical moderators of transformative efforts, constructing conditions that reinforce emerging intentions through supportive cues and networks amplifies persistence and motivation. Conversely, unsupportive surroundings or isolating influences contribute to regression or stagnation. Recognizing and intentionally shaping these external factors is a strategic component in sustaining momentum and bridging conceptual changes into actionable routines. Facilitating access to resources, peer support, and educational tools bolsters the ability to sustain new patterns amid complexity. At a systemic level, awareness of how underlying psychological tendencies intersect with external realities equips individuals to navigate constraints realistically while maintaining agency. Approaching financial growth as an iterative process rather than a singular event attenuates pressure and reduces susceptibility to setbacks. Iterative refinement, based on feedback loops and self-monitoring, fosters adaptive recovery and sustained forward movement without overwhelming cognitive or emotional resources. Ultimately, this integrated approach clarifies that genuine advancement exists at the confluence of stability and change, security and openness. It challenges prevailing assumptions that safeguarding current possessions or conditions must come at the expense of potential progress. By recalibrating internal narratives and externally optimizing conditions, it becomes possible to cultivate resourcefulness and agility within a framework that honors personal values and circumstances. The implication for those seeking to emerge from cycles of stagnation outlined as disguised safety is that transformation is accessible through conscious, measured engagement with one's financial reality. Embracing complexity rather than avoiding it, balancing introspection with action, and leveraging supportive environments contributes to building a sustainable foundation for lasting growth. This perspective invites a redefinition of prudence, not as avoidance of risk, but as informed navigation toward opportunity, underscoring that the true cost of inaction often surpasses the risks inherent in thoughtful change.